California Democrats are going to court suing to stop a voter ID law from being enacted. Coming up, we'll tell you all about the controversy and what we're doing to fight back. I'm Carl DeMaio, chairman of Reform California, and longtime listeners of this show know that I am absolutely committed to cleaning up California's messy elections. The fraud, the lack of internal controls, the outdated voter lists, the ballot harvesting schemes, all of these are undermining public trust and confidence in the outcome of elections. We need to restore confidence in our democracy. And I believe that the best way to do that is to enact a common sense requirement. Voter ID. 28 states have a voter ID statute. The Supreme Court has ruled repeatedly that voter ID statutes do not suppress the vote, are not against civil rights, and are perfectly legitimate for states to enact. But here in California, Democrats want our loosey-goosey system of elections to continue, and they are absolutely opposed to any sort of effort to impose voter ID. Now, as you know, Reform California is leading the fight to place a voter ID constitutional amendment on the next statewide ballot. To do so, we need 1 million signatures, actually more than 1 million for verification purposes, and we are working on that. But until we get that on the ballot statewide, we are encouraging local jurisdictions to enact their own voter ID statutes governing their local elections. Can't change what the state's doing without a constitutional amendment, but we can impose voter ID for local elections. That's exactly what Huntington Beach did. Mayor Tony Strickland in Huntington Beach and a Republican majority put a measure on the ballot in the March primary to require voter ID be shown in order for someone to vote in a city election and a city election alone. Well, now there's Shirley Weber, the Secretary of State, Rob Bonta, the Attorney General. They announced that they're suing Huntington Beach, and they want to overturn voter approval of this voter ID law. Now, Huntington Beach is a city of 200,000 people. And in the election, the measure amended the city's charter to require that if there's a local ballot measure or local race, like school board or city council race on a ballot, that an individual should provide a voter ID. It does not apply to federal races or state races, although let's think about this. If you're applying a voter ID law to get a portion of the ballot, one would presume that you either skip the local elections and vote in the state elections with no voter ID, or you basically present your voter ID card and you're able to vote in both sides of the ballot, both the state and federal races versus the local races. A lot of people were wondering, like, how do we implement this? Well, you apply it to the local races, which means they would print 2 different ballots. You'd get both ballots, and one would require a voter ID. Again, not the perfect solution. The perfect solution is my constitutional amendment to require it state law in all races. But hey, in the meantime, we encourage at least this as a interim step. Anyway, the Democrat politicians are claiming that it suppresses voter participation. Here's the Associated Press article. Quote, state officials previously warned the measure to amend the city's charter would suppress voter participation. They're asking a court to block it from taking effect. It makes it harder for poor, non-white, young, elderly, and disabled voters to cast ballots. Okay. Are you going to call it homophobic as well? I mean, come on, throw in all the isms while you're at it. Nowhere is there any evidence to suggest that voter ID suppresses votes in any of these categories. Zero zip nada. Are we worried that poor, non-white, young, elderly, and disabled voters can't buy alcohol with an ID or get on an airplane with an ID? No one's expressed concerns about that. And if you look at the polling, plurality of Democrats support voter ID. A supermajority of independents and Republicans support voter ID. a majority of Latinos and a majority of African Americans support voter ID. The only people that don't like it are liberal media outlets and liberal politicians. Anyway, the voter ID initiative, it passed with 53% of the vote in the March primary. And there's also another law that's been introduced to overturn Huntington Beach's voter ID initiative, but it's not law yet. And unless it's passed with a 2/3 vote in the Assembly and the State Senate, it would not take effect, wait for it, until January 2025. Remember, in the legislature, if a bill is passed, the effective date of the bill does not take effect until the January after the legislative session, which in this case would be January 2025. Why are Democrats suing? Well, Huntington Beach is in the middle of a competitive congressional district, the 47th congressional district, where Scott Baugh is trying to flip a Democrat seat to the Republicans. He's running against DUI Dave Min, who has a problem with DUI, drunk driving. And so Democrats are trying to stop the voter ID provision from taking effect in the November election. So they know that they probably aren't going to get to the 2/3 vote requirement in the state legislature. They might be able to. We're going to be working our connections to try to hold any Democrat accountable who votes against voter ID. Because this is, as I just mentioned, it's a wildly popular ballot initiative. Independents like it. Even a lot of Democrats like it. So a Democrat legislator voting against voter ID or voting to nullify voter ID, they may end up paying the price in November in some of these competitive districts. So we might be able to peel enough of the Democrats off to prevent the 2/3 from imposing this legislation before the November election. But that's why the lawsuit was filed, is they're hoping to get a restraining order, an injunction against implementation of the measure. Now, in order to show a court that they should do an injunction, there has to be a likelihood that the court case will prevail. And in this case, there is no likelihood that it will prevail. There is no state law prohibiting voter ID at the local level. That's just the reality. That's why the legislators are rushing to try to pass one. Okay, that's the proof of the pudding there. But they also have to show that there'd be irreparable harm. Again, there's no evidence to suggest that voter ID suppresses the vote. This is all just against a bunch of gaslighting and hysteria, lies peddled by the Democrats on this important election integrity reform. So we'll be tracking this. What are we going to do about it? As I mentioned, we're going to try to put pressure on the legislature not to pass the law by 2/3 so that we can keep this in place for the November election. And at Reform California, we do think that the only real viable statewide solution is that constitutional amendment that we've filed, the election integrity initiative that would require voter ID for all state, federal, and local elections in California going forward. We need 1 million signatures to make this initiative a reality. So go online to reformcalifornia.org, click on the Election Integrity Initiative campaign, sign the petition. We are trying to get a House list of at least 200,000 pledges on the petition so that we can use that as our starting point for the wet signature drive. And please do sign up to volunteer to collect signatures as well as make a contribution. We have to collect funds in order to make this signature drive happen. So sign up online at reformcalifornia.org in the Election Integrity Campaign section. Next story I want to get to is this story of a California school board president ordered to pay legal fees after controversy erupted during a flag debate on what flag should fly outside of a school district. My view, the American flag, plain and simple. If you open up it, if you use your flagpole at a public institution to do virtue signaling or adopt social agendas, it's only going to divide the community. I mean, school districts are already failing our kids. 2/3 of kids are failing math proficiencies in the state of California. A majority are failing reading and writing. So stop it with the flag debates. Just put the American flag up there, the state flag, call it a day. Get back to reading, writing, and arithmetic. But so I support the U.S. flag being the policy for all these districts and all the government agencies. That's not what is at issue here, though. And I think Fox News kind of got this story wrong even though it stems from that controversy. You see, a school board member, Ryan Jurgensen, is in the Sunol Glen School Unified School District. And by the way, I think he's doing a great job. I think that he's wonderful. I'm so glad that he's standing up for parents. Bravo. But he did screw some stuff up here. He says that during this controversy, he received death threats. Not denying that at all. I'm sure that he did get heinous attacks, threatening attacks, and it's unacceptable. This is not how we should be doing public discourse. Well, he decided that he would seek a restraining order against the wife of one of his fellow school board members. Ted Romo is on the school board, and his wife, Denise Romo, is a former school trustee, and that he says that she was lying about him. She was making inflammatory statements. And as a result of her speaking out in public against him, that members of the community then took things into their own hands and issued threats against him. Again, let me make it quite clear. I am absolutely behind Jurgensen and what he's trying to do policy-wise on the flag debate and the other things that he's doing on behalf of parents. He's fighting for parents. But I'm also a believer in the Constitution and the First Amendment. And you're not allowed to silence the opposition with phony restraining orders. And that's what he did. He went into court. He filed a restraining order saying that he was being threatened and that he blamed this wife of a trustee. He said, quote, Jurgensen said the restraining order was made to stop Kent Romo from making false statements about him that he believed were leading to harassment against him and his family. Jurgensen said he wanted to merely bring the temperature down. Well, that's not why you get a restraining order. A restraining order is when someone specifically makes a threat against you. And it can't be like, we're going to hold your feet to the fire in the next election. Oh, they're going to burn me at the stake. No. Hold your feet to the fire is, again, political speech. If someone does make a threat against you as a public official or as a private individual, you do have a right to seek a restraining order if you feel that you are being threatened and you're afraid for your safety. You cannot seek a restraining order because someone speaks out against you, even if they're lying about you. Again, I call balls and strikes on this show. All right. So now the restraining order has been withdrawn, dismissed. And as is the case in California, when you go after someone to chill their First Amendment rights, in the state of California, like many other states, there is a statute called the SLAPP statute. The SLAPP statute is designed to protect your First Amendment rights. It's called Strategic Litigation Against Public Participation. I think that's what the SLAPP stands for. It's frivolous litigation. It's a lawsuit designed to bully and silence someone who you disagree with. And again, I'm not siding with this trustee's wife. I'm not siding with the threats. I'm actually siding on the policy with the school board member. But I do have to say that his approach was negligent. It was deficient. He got then countersued for attorney's fees, and now it will cost $20,000. Well, actually, that's not the $20,000. That is actually a recall. Let's see what the amount of money it is. I don't think he's actually disclosing. Oh, it's $8,455. There it is. $8,455 is what he's being charged for attorney's fees. And that seems about what attorneys would charge to deal with something like this. So just a warning to folks out there, even if people are being disgraceful and lying and nasty, be very careful about trying to take away their First Amendment rights. We're all constitutional conservatives, and that means I'll defend the right of even a liberal to have their constitutional rights. I know they won't defend my rights. I get it, but that's not why I'm in this fight. I want to make sure that we are principled. Last element, last story I want to fit in real quick. You know that California faces a massive budget deficit, $75 billion. But one of the things I keep trying to point out is that on paper it's $75 billion, but it's actually much more than that because we've got over $1 trillion in unfunded retiree healthcare and pension liabilities for state and local government employees. And under the state budget, we're supposed to be paying our normal cost each year for these benefits because they use accounting gimmicks to fake the books. So they basically say, oh yeah, we're going to pay all these pensions out 20 years from now when people retire. Well, the actuaries say in order to pay out the benefits 20 years from now for each employee, here's what the state has to pay in an upfront contribution to cover the cost and put it in the stock market and invest. Well, we've got $1 trillion because they've used Enron style accounting for the pension system. So if you actually add in the debt service on actual pension liabilities and you add in the normal true cost of what we are promising today, but not really paying for today, you're talking about a $150 billion budget deficit easily. Well, a little pittance was supposed to go into paying down the pension liability. $1.7 billion was supposed to be put into pre-funding these pension liabilities under Proposition 2 from 2014. 2014, politicians said, oh, we're going to do a fiscal reform measure to pay down our debt in exchange for a bunch of other bad things that they were trying to push forward. Well, what Newsom's doing is a shell game. He's basically saying instead of paying down the debt, I'm going to use $1.7 billion to cover the cost of the existing pension payment, a portion of the existing pension payment. So it allows him to raid our reserves, kick the can down the road, and make the pension underfunding crisis even worse. This is the sort of shell game. This is the sort of financial irresponsibility that we should be calling out. Where are the Republicans speaking out about this? They're not. Because they go along to get along too often in Sacramento, and I don't think that that does well for taxpayers. We have to be the ones being the fiscal watchdogs, raising the issues. Please go on our website, reformcalifornia.org, like and subscribe to this video. Chip in a contribution to our fight. We're trying to put new members into the legislature who will fight as a true opposition party and join something that we're calling the Reform California Caucus. We can't do that without your help. So sign up today, contribute today, join the fight. Till next time, Carl DeMaio, Chairman of Reform California. Help us break through the censorship of the liberal media. Like this video, subscribe to this channel, and smash that notification button so you can stay up to date on all the developments in California news and politics. Also, please visit the website, reformcalifornia.org, for ongoing news coverage and to join one of our campaigns in the fight to take back our state. If you can, please sign up as a volunteer or chip in a contribution. This episode of Reform California with Carl DeMaio, paid for by Carl DeMaio for State Assembly 2024.